Hello, everyone, and welcome to United Way. Live United. I'm Terry Westerfield, and joining me today, I have a friend in Linda France, who is the principal for the Bright School for the Deaf, and she is here to talk about all the wonderful things they do for the kids. Now, the Bright School is one of United Way of Southeast Louisiana's community impact partners or partner agencies. The Bright School provides speech, language, and auditory training for deaf, hard of hearing, and speech and language delayed children birth to 3 years. And Linda, let's start this off because I just have a habit of saying the Bright School for the Deaf, but is that really the whole name or is it just the Bright School?
Actually, the title is the Bright School for the Deaf.
Okay.
Yes,
Wanted
it
to be
is.
sure because sometimes we've had it some way, sometimes the other, and I know, but whenever you say the Bright School, I see bright smiles because
Yes.
people know all the wonderful things you do for our
I
children.
hope so.
But let's talk about that because 0 to 3, wow, those are very, very critical years for all children.
It is, Terry. And we have started the program also to include 3-year-olds. So we actually extended our program and we're calling it Bright Start. So now we're actually serving children from birth to 3 and also holding on to those 3-year-olds so that they can just gain some more skills before they move on to a typical classroom.
Well, let's take it from the very beginning. For those parents or friends or grandparents who are listening today, sometimes I think it can be readily discernible, shall we say, that a child might have a hearing problem. But other times, it's not right away, especially when there are newborns who are coming home. So maybe you could talk about what parents need to look for. What are some of the signs or how to start to ascertain if they have a hearing problem on their hands?
Absolutely. Well, we are very fortunate in the state of Louisiana to have the Early Hearing Detection Agency. And every child that is born in the state of Louisiana is screened for a hearing loss. And that test is done automatically. So a parent, a family that's leaving the hospital should have either a pass or a fail diagnosis. And if the family is leaving with a failed diagnosis, then they will refer to an audiologist. And that pediatric audiologist will give them the final diagnosis on whether or not their child has a hearing loss.
And is that, Linda, is that done through waves or something?
Absolutely.
Or is it the old tuning fork? Or?
There's a few different options, and different hospitals use different testing equipment to get that pass or fail diagnosis. But the baby, the infant, doesn't have to participate. Some little probes are set up on their head, and like I said, they either get a pass or a fail. So from that point on, they go to the audiologist, and then the whole gamut of testing is done to really get a conclusive diagnosis on whether the baby actually has a hearing loss.
And before we get to that, I must imagine that hearing loss in a child is as varied as the problems out there. It's different for everyone. But are there any specific, diseases or I think of, mom caught the flu or this or that. Is there any kind of research that shows that some children could be put at risk because their parents were exposed to something?
Well, there are always risk factors for hearing loss. When I was working with families through another agency, we were in the home right after the diagnosis. And many of our conversations ask for those risk factors. Does hearing loss run in your family? Was your baby in NICU for an amount of time? And when we go through all of the risk factors, probably 85 to 90% of those families, we walk out the home shrugging our shoulders
Never
like
knowing.
there's no significant relationship between the diagnosis and what the mom went through during pregnancy or NICU or any of those risk factors. But we do have that population with deaf mom, deaf dad. Absolutely, the risk factor is higher to have a deaf child.
I would think that's a genetic, that
There's
might
a
be
genetic component. And also those babies that spend some time, either those preemie babies that spend some time in the NICU unit that are given otoacoustic drugs.
Oh, right, for the oxygen things that can affect their eardrums.
Yes,
sure.
they can damage the hair in their ear canal.
And that's what we forget. That's little tiny microscope almost, and that helps.
Yes.
That's where you hear.
Yes, absolutely. So those babies are also for a higher risk. But like I said, the majority of the times we cannot really put an answer to why a baby has the hearing loss. And there are many, many different degrees of hearing loss.
I say it just runs across the spectrum.
Yes,
then.
we have hard of hearing kids, and then we have truly deaf children, and many different kinds of diagnosis of hearing loss. So all of that information can be very confusing for families. It's very traumatic to have that diagnosis, or even to leave with that form from the hospital with that fail that they needed to be referred. So it's really important for those families to get in touch with someone right from the beginning that can explain and give them options and kind of pave the way for what's upcoming. It really sets their mind. You're never comfortable with a child that has a hearing loss, especially in the beginning. But talking to someone that has the information and not just looking at forms and reports, it clarifies for
I was going to say,
for
and you're
them.
getting that empathy, a bit of a support system here. Now you're getting set on the right road to
Yes.
have success for your child and for yourself in raising a healthy child.
Yes.
So do they, as you said, Linda, they might go home with this kind of pass-fail from the hospital, and you go to an audiologist. Do they go to you first, then the audiologist, or is it the audiologist, and then they know that the Bright School works so successfully with our very youngest?
We get referrals usually from the audiologist once that diagnosis is documented and we have a certain degree of loss. Then the audiologist can refer to Bright School. So we get numerous phone calls from moms of a 1-month-old or a 3-month-old. Here in Louisiana, like I said previously, Eddie sets strict guidelines. By 1 month, a baby should be diagnosed. By 3 months, that baby should either have hearing aids or on the track of receiving their hearing aids to get good amplification. And by 6 months, they should be involved with early intervention. So we're hoping between that birth and 6 months that we've made some kind of contact with that family.
And that's if you know. But if you don't know, because perhaps the child did come home from the hospital and everything seemed to be fine, but now you're a parent and you're at home, or a grandparent, and you're noticing some things. What should you look for if maybe you suspect something's changed here and that my little girl or my little boy doesn't sing the way I think he should be or she should be? What do you look for, Linda?
Actually, this just happened this week.
Oh, my goodness.
We received a phone call from a family that has a little boy that is now 1.5 years, and he was just diagnosed to be profoundly deaf. So you would think that with all of our systems that are set up, that we would deter those situations from happening, but some kind of way he fell through the cracks, and the mama was asking pediatrician, she felt like something just wasn't right. He wasn't reacting to sound. He wasn't talking yet. He wasn't babbling. And the pediatrician never likes to give bad news to any family, but said, well, let's wait and let's see what happens. And some kids are slow, and maybe he'll catch up. And the mom kind of took the reins on her own and went to see an audiologist and came back with this diagnosis.
Well, good for that, because I also think of the commercial or PSA that's out there about autism and how children don't always, and one could almost, in that sense, be confused for the other if they're not paying attention or directly interacting, shall we say, because they don't know.
They don't
can't
know.
hear.
They don't know. And Mom, you get that gut feeling, comparing to other children or other members of the family, or grandma saying, shouldn't he be doing da-da-da-da-da? So you get that feeling that just something isn't right. So unfortunately, that still happens.
Yeah.
We would hope that it's very minimal, but now the little boy with this diagnosis absolutely needs the services of early intervention to hopefully close in that gap.
Well, let's segue, because I do want to talk about the little boy and about what will be done and how he can be helped. But also maybe let's backtrack for just a moment and continue on that path about those who already, you could be an infant, just a few months old, and they've already found out that, yes, that the child does have a hearing problem. What next? It's been the audiologist, and maybe they suggested you need to see Principal Linda France over at the Bright School. what happens then? Because again, this has got to be a terribly confusing and often scary situation for a parent.
Yes. So originally, when we received that initial referral from an audiologist or any agency or any family, a family can refer themselves to the Bright School. It doesn't necessarily have to come through some entity. But we get things started with a lot of parent education. That's the opening door, because we want our parents to be good advocates for their child, but we also want them to have the information and the education behind them to make good decisions, because ultimately it's their child and they need to make the decisions when they're talking to cochlear implant surgeons or audiologists or pediatrician or speech therapist. So we like them to be well informed and well educated. So a lot of parent education starts off right from the beginning.
And what are some of those things that they are taught or have to learn? Because I would imagine, again, each child is an individual is going to have a different way in which he or she learns and at what rate of speed.
And Terry, that really depends on the family. I've had families that walk in the door and want to know how to read a test report. I've had families that walk in and want to know if their child will be able to go to high school. I've had families that walk in and cry for 2 hours because they're still in the grieving process. So we take it from wherever they are, and we let them guide the way for us to see where they are in this pathway and where we can support them, to give them the options.
Now, you talk about a family, and again, I keep thinking of parents or guardians, but a family is often much more than that. So there's siblings involved or extended family that live in the same home. It really becomes everyone is somehow involved, correct?
Everyone is involved in the family. We've had visits with aunts and uncles, with cousins, absolutely brothers and sisters. Last week we had a visit with a mom and the 2 grandmothers that came in because they just wanted to learn and see what the Bright School does and see if it's a good fit for their family and their child.
Well, when you're starting out, and again, we're talking now from 0 to 3, and so again, it's those early months. The diagnosis is there that there's either some hearing loss or perhaps profound. What are some of the first things that you do as an educator and those with the Bright School in helping the parents or the family and the child interact or learn? How does that education all begin?
Well, the Bright School is actually the only school in the metropolitan area that offers all methods of communication. So once that parent knows what their options are, and if they are choosing a visual type of communication, sign language, then we follow that path. Then the family is taught signs. The child is immediately engulfed in sign language. If they choose an oral approach and are thinking that they don't want to use visual signs, or their family is just not bought into learning the sign language, then we support them in an oral approach. So basically, when they have that education and they're able to make and look at their options and then make a valid choice, we follow their path, because a family has to be bought into what their decision is and support that decision in order for it to work.
Well, I would imagine, Linda, do you ever try to do all of the above, or maybe start with one and then find out that no, we need to switch gears here? And I would think, again, that's because of the individual child and or maybe in just the family situation.
Absolutely, and it's the choices that they make. Our hard of hearing children, if they are amplified with hearing aids early on, there's really no need for a visual communication.
And that's the signing.
At the signing,
Okay.
yes, because with their hearing aids on, they are well in speech range and will acquire speech and language typically if they wear their hearing aids. So they're just there for language development, for monitoring, to make sure that they're hitting all those good milestones along the way. For a child that's on the other end of the pendulum, those children that are profoundly deaf, they probably would need some type of visual communication just to fill in for that language development, to get them to be comfortable with learning what things are and what things mean in their environment. If those parents then choose to implant, which cannot happen until they're 12 months old in the state of Louisiana, then what we see is when they're starting to get that auditory input, and the more that we work with them, then the signs go away and the speech happens.
And that's the cochlear implant,
Yes,
correct?
ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Now, Linda, I'm just sitting here and thinking about this. again, we always hear how birth of 3 and a child's brain is just busy at work. And that's when you're most adept, hearing or not, at being able to learn other languages and doing this and that. So again, this is saying the earlier, the better. And I remember in some schools, and it was quite a big phenomenon a few years ago, hearing children were being taught to sign too because they'd not been able to learn to speak at that age. But because, again, all the brain and the synapse, everything are being formed, they were signing away.
We actually have some hearing children that are enrolled at the Bright School. And the reason why we do that is because best practice for children that are hearing impaired are to also be exposed to their hearing peers.
Ah, okay.
So we also mainstream some hearing children. They're exposed to signs. They pick up the signs very quickly, but they're also there for that good peer conversation.
Say, learning back and forth.
Yes,
They're both
absolutely.
exchanging information.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's lovely. And I have been fortunate enough to be a place, I have to tell anybody who's listening today, the Bright School, it is. I was teasing earlier, but I meant it. Talk about a bright place to be. And the smile it can put on your face. You go in there and you see these beautiful children. And as you said, in all stages of learning. Some who can't hear at all, and others who have their hearing aids and they're listening. And I had the kind of privilege of meeting one little girl a year or two ago who had just had her implant, and what a world of difference. Her mother said she didn't want to sleep because she just wanted to stay awake and listen to everything because she had never heard any of these sounds before. And it just made you feel so, so good that something could be done to help these marvelous, marvelous kids.
We're very fortunate right now to have the availability of families to choose a cochlear implant for their child. Years ago, that technology didn't exist. So we were then depending on educating a deaf child in an entirely different way. Not that they weren't educated, because they were, absolutely, but this just enables a deaf child to have that auditory input, and it opens the world up to them, because then they're able to progress with their speech and language. And the majority of our families that come through the doors of Bright School, their ultimate goal is for their child to be in a typical kindergarten class by age 5. So we work really hard to try to make that happen.
Now let's go back to the cochlear for just a moment, because we're talking about it is an implant, but for those who've heard perhaps the term before but don't really know how it works, could you explain a little bit about that?
Absolutely. The cochlear implant is a device that is implanted. It is a surgical procedure. It normally takes between 3 to 5 hours. And there is technology that is inserted. It is not brain surgery. A lot of families shy away and think that's an old myth that, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to put my child through brain surgery. It doesn't go anywhere near the brain. It is a wonderful piece of technology that actually a fiber optic wire is sent through the cochlea, and it's implanted in the cochlea. And then underneath the skin, you have a magnet. And that magnet stays there, and it hooks up to the speech processor that the child wears outside of the ear. So there's actually an internal device and an external device. But with both of those working at the same time, the child is able to get auditory input.
Now, do you do it in just one ear or both?
That's a parent's decision, and also an audiologist's decision. We have some children that only have a unilateral implant, and that is because of the type of degree of loss that they had. And we also have parents that choose to have bilateral implants. Again, years ago, we were only doing unilateral implants because we didn't know
that you could do, I guess, both of them, that would make it better, I would assume.
That it would be
sure
hearing 2 ears hearing better than 1 ear.
Well, it's just like if you put a headphone on and you're listening, or your earbuds, and But, quick question. If we're doing it so early, and we keep saying here, earlier is better, but will the technology, I'm assuming the technology will change, so much has, and a child grows, will they have to have something adapted? Will they have to go in and have new surgeries, or just the outer piece that will go with that's the head
shake?
The outer
piece, yes.
So that's great. So again, but that's nice, because that's kind of a myth buster then.
It is.
For parents.
It is a myth buster. It's just like a technology with a new computer. We get a big and better one every 6 months, every year, and the same thing can happen with the cochlea. The good part of that is that we can switch out that external device to get the upgrade, but the child does not have to go through surgery again.
And that is marvelous. That is, it is. It's just, as you said, it's almost like getting the new iPhone or something.
And
to
now
the
our
extent.
kids can swim with their implants. Previously, hearing aids and implants, you couldn't be submerged in water. You couldn't go by water. I have had some parents that take the implants off even if it's raining because the implant might short out and stop working. Now, again, technology has improved so much that there is a new speech processor that can be submerged into water. So now our kids can have swimming lessons and be involved with water activities and not have the fear that something's going to short out and that implant's going to stop working.
Say, and to me, that's logical, too, because you have a lifeguard or someone who's blowing a whistle or warning you to get out of the area or something. You need to know that. You need to hear that.
Absolutely.
Oh, my goodness. It's just amazing the things that have gone on. And again, I love when I come over there and the kids are just, they're wonderful. And I see that parental involvement, too. They'll come in and learn. And I know that I was there one day, and a little boy, adorable. In fact, we had used him in some of our promotional materials, United Way of Southeast Louisiana, in conjunction with a Bright School. Cutest little boy ever, and Mom was in there learning away, and because the other children I believe, were in school, but his brothers and sisters, and she wanted to be sure that when he got home and everybody could talk and play and converse and really have, quote unquote, a normal childhood.
Absolutely. And we actually have parent meetings once a month. It's not mandatory that the parents attend, but I encourage them to attend because that's when they really get the good family-to-family support. And not only that, but that's the time that if their child's using visual communication, we're able to teach the signs. We never want a child to go home and feel like they're even more isolated because their family doesn't know the signs that they're learning at school. So we want to make it a family-oriented program. It is a family-oriented program. Our families are involved right along with the kids. They're able to sit in during therapy sessions, during speech, during individual special instruction. Some of them stay for the morning and volunteer so that they're able to be part of circle time, so that they're really involved with their kids' progression in language and speech.
Now, Linda, you're talking about circle time. And so the image that comes to mind is the teacher on the floor in the little chair and has a book and reading. Is it something similar that you do, or how do you work with the kids of all these different variances in ability to hear?
We're very fortunate enough that we have teachers that have their master's degree in deaf education. And they don't sit in chairs, Terry, because they're on the floor with the kids.
They're on the floor with the kids,
majority of the
okay.
day. But it is just that. It's sitting around, and whatever the thematic unit is for the month, activities are age appropriate to get that good language development in. And it comes in many different directions. We could have a kiddo that's signing and a kiddo that's not, and a child that's just having a little bit concerns with sitting during circle time. So all of those are addressed at one time. We're also very fortunate to have good volunteers and good teacher assistants that enables my teachers to be able to do that and still support that circle time and those kids so that every child is getting individualized support.
Well, I know that to me has got to be key because that's one of the three. In fact, we didn't really name them out specifically, but that's what you're also known for at the Bright School because you do have the three different programs. You have what Language Says It All. Or no, you've got a number of other different things going on, but they're the three biggest. Can we talk about those right now?
Well, of course, we are a United Way agency.
Well, thank
That's
you.
at the top of the list. We're also early step providers.
That's it.
Early Steps is an early intervention program for children in the state of Louisiana that provide appropriate services for children from birth to 3. So we're also early step providers. We have also a collaboration with New Orleans Speech and Hearing.
And that's another United Way partner.
Yes, it is.
And you two work are you still in the same building? Because at one time you were after Katrina. You really reached out and joined forces.
We were in the same building for a short time after Katrina. Now we've moved on, but our speech therapist comes from New Orleans Speech and Hearing. So she's with us right now 2 days a week to give that individual speech therapy in collaboration with New Orleans Speech and Hearing Center.
I would imagine that that's going to be kind of the next step. As you said, the initial goal is all these children will be able to have the opportunity to communicate and hear in the best way possible. And to be ready and go to kindergarten and succeed there and just move forward in life. But as you get older, I imagine some of the things will come into play that then it might shift gears and move over to the folks at speech and hearing. And
I think that once that they are mainstreamed into and they're a little bit older, then when we start looking at is not if they have the language, but how they are speaking. How are they speaking? And it's more articulation. And yes, they will leave us eventually and continue on with New Orleans Speech and Hearing for that extra speech support that they need.
But again, they're grounded in your program. They've had the opportunity to grow up now and go to school. And many years ago, I'm saying many years ago, it wasn't even all that long ago that sometimes that didn't always happen. Because now with the modern technology, the advances that have been made there, incredible teachers such as yourself and others, it really, really is inspiring what you do. And I just want to say thank you.
We're very proud of what we do. We're proud of the kids that they are able to leave and go into a typical either preschool program or a typical kindergarten program and succeed. But it's not all done by ourselves. It's our families, it's our parents, it's being a United Way agency, it's collaborations with other agencies, and it's all just included to help and support those families succeed.
And I was pulling some information when I was studying up, and I think this was actually not with the most recent census per se, but they were breaking out into some data. But they were saying over 28 million Americans are considered deaf or hearing disabled. Now, I'm sure that runs all the gamut, because at one point they said that's more than 3 million children have hearing loss, and 1.3 million of these children are under 3 years of age. So again, it seems, unfortunately, we're having more with hearing loss, but fortunately, we have more who can do something about it and give these children an opportunity to learn and grow and be the best they can. And I think that's fabulous.
We're very excited, Terry, to say, though, that we originally, Bright School was birth to 3, and we still are. But this year is the first year that we've opened it up to 3-year-olds. So a lot of our families just weren't comfortable with moving on into other entities, either being public school or Catholic school or private schools. They just needed another year under their belt. So we hung on to those kids, and now we have it's called Bright Start, which is our new 3-year-old classroom. And again, we have a teacher of the deaf in that classroom, very fortunate, just to give them that extra support before we cut them loose completely.
And I think that would be great, because a lot of other, when you look at education, early education, it's the 0 to 3 too. So that also. But Linda, please, people who've been listening today and they say, I know someone who may need some assistance, or I want to at least get more information. Should they call you? Is there a web address, a phone number? What is best?
There is both. You can actually call me. Please feel free to call me. If you have a child that has a hearing loss, or you suspect that you have a child with a hearing loss, or you have a family member, my cell phone number is 504-256-9200. Or you can visit our website at www.thebrightschool.org.
And one more time, just in case, I always ask everybody to do this, because somebody's running off right now getting that pen or paper. So one more time, you're a brave woman giving out that cell phone.
My cell phone number is 504-256-9200. Or you could visit our website at www.thebrightschool.org.
And Linda, thank you so very much for taking the time to join me today. Linda France, the principal of the Bright School. What a wonderful place. And I want to tell you all about United Way, because United Way is a community impact partner. of the Bright School. At United Way, we aspire to help people live the best life possible. We support health and human service programs of nonprofit agencies like the Bright School that with United Way work to strengthen children and youth, the elderly, families, and individuals from all walks of life in Jefferson, Orleans, Plaquemine, St. Bernard, St. Tammany, Tangipahoa, and Washington parishes. For United Way, I'm Terry Westerfield. And Linda, will you join me in saying, Live
Live United.